A mirror waits in a forgotten room, silent, untouched, as if time itself refuses to breathe near it. The air is heavy, soaked in the faint scent of incense and something older, something that should have faded long ago. They say mirrors reflect truth, but this one doesn't. This one remembers. Because sometimes it doesn't show you, it shows her. A bride dressed in red stands within the glass, not moving, not blinking, not alive. The color of her gown is too deep, too dark, like it was never meant for celebration, but for something unfinished, something interrupted. And then you notice it, her face. There is none. No eyes to meet yours, no lips to speak, only an empty void where a person should be. And yet, you can feel it. She is looking at you, watching, waiting for someone to step closer, for someone to take the place that was never filled, because this is not a reflection. This is an invitation. And once you see her, the ceremony has already begun. Jian Mo had seen abandoned places before, ruined temples, collapsed houses, forgotten shrines, swallowed by time. None of them unsettled him the way this place did. It wasn't the decay, it was the silence. The entire building felt preserved, not in the way something is protected, but in the way something is paused, as if the world outside had moved on, but this place had been left behind, trapped in a moment that refused to end. The bridal chamber was at the end of a narrow hallway. The door was slightly open, waiting. He pushed it gently. The hinges didn't creak. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Inside, everything was still arranged for a wedding. Red silk draped across wooden furniture. Paper decorations hung from the ceiling, their color faded but intact. A ceremonial bed stood untouched, covered in embroidered sheets that had somehow escaped the rot consuming the rest of the house. No dust disturbed the surface. No footprints marked the floor. It looked like someone had prepared everything and then vanished before the ceremony could begin. Jian Mo stepped inside. The air was colder, not naturally cold, but hollow, like warmth had been taken away rather than lost. His gaze moved slowly across the room, taking in every detail, every object frozen in place. A comb rested beside a bronze mirror stand, hairpins scattered neatly as if placed down with care. A pair of red shoes positioned perfectly beside the bed. Everything was waiting for someone who never arrived. And then he saw it, the mirror. Unlike everything else, it was flawless. No cracks, no dust, no sign of age. It stood against the far wall, tall and imposing, its dark frame carved with intricate patterns that seemed to twist when stared at too long. It didn't belong to the room, or maybe it belonged to it. Jian Mo felt his chest tighten as he approached. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of fear, but because something inside him was telling him to stop. He didn't listen. He stood before the mirror. For a moment, it reflected only him, a man standing in a dead room surrounded by the remains of a wedding that never happened. Then the reflection shifted, not suddenly, not violently, but slowly, like something emerging from deep water. A figure appeared behind him, still, silent, dressed in red. Jian Mo's breath caught in his throat. He didn't turn around, because he already knew there was no one there. Only the mirror could see her. Or worse, only the mirror could hold her. The bride stood just behind him in the reflection, her posture unnatural, her head tilted slightly as if studying him. Waiting, watching, inviting. And as Jian Mo stared, unable to move, unable to breathe, he realized something far more terrifying than her presence. The reflection wasn't copying him anymore. It had stopped, and she was getting closer. Jian Mo couldn't breathe. Not because something was choking him, but because something deeper, something instinctive, was telling his body that breathing was no longer safe. The figure in the mirror stood perfectly still, a bride in red. The color was wrong. Not the vibrant red of celebration, but something darker, heavier, as if the fabric had been soaked layer after layer in something that was never meant to dry. Her sleeves hung unnaturally long, brushing against the invisible floor of the reflection. The embroidery across her gown shimmered faintly, intricate patterns twisting into shapes that didn't make sense the longer he looked at them. Symbols, perhaps, or warnings. Her head tilted slightly to one side, not in curiosity, but in recognition, as if she had been waiting and he had finally arrived. Jian Mo forced his eyes upward, toward her face, and immediately wished he hadn't. There was nothing there. No eyes, no nose, no lips, no skin, just a hollow absence, a void carved into the shape where a face should exist. It wasn't darkness. It was worse than darkness. Darkness still has depth. This had none. It was empty in a way that rejected existence itself. And yet, he felt it. A gaze, cold, focused, unblinking, locked directly onto him. His reflection trembled slightly, but he hadn't moved. He was certain of that. Every muscle in his body was frozen, as if the moment he shifted, something irreversible would happen. Then he noticed it, the delay. When he inhaled, his reflection followed, just a fraction too late. When his chest rose, the mirror hesitated before copying him. But the bride, she did not hesitate. She moved independently, slowly, deliberately, one step closer. Jian Mo's throat tightened. His mind screamed at him to turn around, to confirm what he already knew, that nothing was standing behind him in the real world. But he couldn't, because if he turned and she was there, that would mean the mirror was no longer the boundary. And if he turned and she wasn't, that would mean something inside the mirror was trying to replace reality itself. Another step. Closer now. Too close. Her sleeve brushed against his shoulder, inside the reflection. Jian Mo felt it. A faint, freezing pressure against his real skin. His eyes widened. That wasn't possible. The mirror wasn't just showing her. It was letting her through. A low sound filled the room. At first he thought it was the wind. Then he realized it was coming from the mirror. A whisper. No, not a whisper, a chorus. Dozens of voices layered together, speaking in tones too soft to understand, yet heavy enough to press against his mind like weight. Fragments of sound slipped through, broken syllables, half-formed words, vows, repeating endlessly. The bride raised her hand. Her fingers were pale, too pale, like something that had never known warmth. They extended slowly toward him, trembling not with weakness, but with anticipation. This was not an attack. This was a ritual, an invitation, a role waiting to be filled. Jian Mo tried to step back. His body refused. His feet felt rooted to the ground, as if the floor itself had decided to hold him in place. The air thickened, the room darkened, and the mirror was no longer flat. Its surface rippled like disturbed water. The bride's hand reached forward, breaking through the boundary. Her fingers stretched out of the glass, impossibly long, impossibly real. They hovered inches from his chest, waiting, not to grab, not yet, but to be accepted, to be taken. Because the moment he touched her, the ceremony would no longer need the mirror, and Jian Mo would no longer belong to the world outside it. The moment her fingers brushed his chest, everything broke. Not shattered, not exploded, but collapsed like reality itself had lost the strength to hold its shape. The air folded inward. The room stretched unnaturally, the walls bending like soft paper under invisible pressure. Jian Mo felt his balance disappear, not because he had moved, but because space itself no longer obeyed direction. Up, down. None of it mattered anymore. The mirror surged. Its surface burst outward in a silent wave, swallowing the distance between them in an instant. The bride's hand, once hovering, now pressed firmly against him, cold beyond anything human, a cold that didn't just touch his skin, but sank deeper, into bone, into thought. He tried to scream. No sound came out, because sound had no place here. The world inverted, and then he was falling. But there was no ground to fall toward, only fragments, shards of something familiar, spinning endlessly around him. Pieces of the room, the red chamber, the bed, the door, the decorations, all breaking apart into reflections, each one slightly different, slightly wrong. In one, the room was pristine. In another, it was rotting. In another, it was filled with people, watching, waiting. Jian Mo's body twisted midair as something tightened around his waist. The bride. She was no longer distant, no longer contained. She was here. Her grip was impossibly strong, her fingers digging into him as if anchoring him to this collapsing world. He couldn't see her face, but he didn't need to. He could feel her intention. Not anger, not hatred, something worse. Desperation. The falling stopped, suddenly, violently. Jian Mo slammed onto solid ground, or what felt like ground. The impact knocked the breath out of him, though he wasn't even sure breathing still worked here. His vision blurred, then slowly refocused. And what he saw was wrong. The bridal chamber was gone, replaced by something larger, a ceremonial hall. Red pillars stretched upward into darkness. Lanterns swayed gently overhead, casting dim, uneven light across the space. Long tables lined the sides, covered in offerings that looked fresh, too fresh, as if time had reset, as if nothing had ever decayed. Jian Mo pushed himself up, his hands trembling. He wasn't alone. Figures sat along the tables, dozens of them, guests. Their heads bowed, their bodies perfectly still. At first glance, they looked normal, but then one of them twitched, just slightly. Another turned its head, too slowly, too stiff. Their faces blurred, not hidden, not covered, just undefined, as if the details had been erased. A low chant filled the hall, soft, rhythmic, repetitive. Jian Mo turned toward the source. At the far end of the hall stood an altar, and beside it, him, not him, another version of him, dressed in ceremonial robes, red, standing motionless, facing forward. Jian Mo's chest tightened. That wasn't a reflection, that was a role, and somehow he was already in it. The bride stood beside the altar, waiting, still faceless, still watching. The chanting grew louder, the guests began to move. Not freely, but in sequence, mechanical, like puppets following a script written long ago. They stood, they bowed, they sat, then repeated, again, again. The same motions, the same timing, perfectly synchronized, endlessly looping. Jian Mo staggered backward. No. His voice finally returned, but it sounded distant, like it didn't belong to him. This isn't real. But the floor beneath him was solid. The air, though heavy, was present, and the cold was everywhere. The bride turned her head, slowly, toward him. Then she stepped forward. The entire hall reacted. The chanting shifted, lower, heavier, final. Jian Mo felt something tighten around his chest, not physically, but symbolically, like invisible threads were pulling him into position, guiding him, forcing him, step by step toward the altar, toward the role that had been waiting. His body moved, against his will, each step slow, heavy, inevitable. The other him at the altar flickered like a reflection losing stability. And with each flicker, Jian Mo felt himself becoming more solid in its place, replacing it, becoming it. The bride stopped just inches away, her empty face tilted upward, expectant. The chanting reached its peak. The guests froze. Silence fell, and in that silence, Jian Mo understood. This wasn't a trap, it was a cycle, a ceremony that had never been completed, a role that could never remain empty. And now, it was his turn to finish it. The bride extended her hand, waiting for him to take it, because the moment he did, the ceremony would continue, and this time, it would not reset. Jian Mo couldn't stop moving, even as his mind screamed, even as every instinct clawed at him to resist. His body continued forward, step by step, drawn toward the altar as if pulled by invisible threads. The hall pulsed around him, not like a living thing, but like a memory trying to stay alive. The lanterns above flickered in uneven rhythm, their light dimming and brightening without pattern. Shadows stretched across the floor, bending in ways that didn't match the movement of the flames. Nothing here followed rules, except one, the ceremony. Jian Mo reached the altar. The moment his foot crossed the final step, everything reset. The chanting stopped, the guests froze, the bride vanished, and suddenly, he was standing at the beginning of the hall again, his breath caught. What? The lanterns were steady now. The air was still. The guests sat quietly at their tables, heads lowered, motionless like statues waiting for a signal. At the far end, the altar, and beside it, the bride. Exactly where she had been before, waiting, unchanged. Jian Mo looked down at himself. His clothes had changed. The moment he noticed it, his stomach dropped. He was no longer wearing what he came in with. He was dressed in red, the groom's robe, heavy fabric wrapped tightly around his body, embroidered with golden patterns that seemed to shift if he stared too long. The sleeves felt restrictive, like they were designed not for comfort, but for control, for containment. No, he tried to move backward. His body didn't respond. The chanting began again, soft at first, then louder, the same rhythm, the same tone, identical to before. Jian Mo's body stepped forward, again, the exact same steps, the exact same pace, like he had already done this, like he was repeating it. His heart pounded as realization crept in. This wasn't happening once, it had already happened, many times, and he just didn't remember. The guests stood in perfect synchronization. They bowed, they sat, they bowed again. The loop had begun. Jian Mo forced his eyes to the sides, trying to break the pattern, trying to find something, anything that changed. At first, nothing. Then he saw it. One of the guests, its head was tilted slightly differently, not by much, just enough to feel wrong. As the loop continued, the head twitched, adjusted, corrected itself, back into position, like a mistake being erased. Jian Mo's breath trembled. This place wasn't just repeating, it was correcting, maintaining, ensuring the ceremony stayed perfect, complete, unbroken. He reached the midpoint of the hall, and suddenly, the world glitched. For a fraction of a second, everything changed. The lanterns went dark, the guests vanished, the hall decayed, rotting, collapsed, the altar cracked, and the bride stood alone, her red dress torn, stained, her body trembling, not with stillness, but with fear. Her faceless void flickered, and for the briefest moment, a real face appeared, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream, alive. Then everything snapped back. The perfect ceremony returned. The guests resumed, the chanting continued, as if nothing had happened. Jian Mo's chest tightened. That wasn't part of it. His voice barely existed here, swallowed by the weight of the ritual. That was something else. Something breaking through. A memory, a truth, hidden beneath the repetition. He reached the altar again. The bride stood before him, unmoving, waiting, her hands slowly lifted, offering the same gesture, the same invitation. Jian Mo felt his arm rise, against his will, his hand trembling as it moved toward hers. No, stop! But the force controlling him was absolute, unyielding. His fingers were inches away, and then everything reset again, back to the beginning. The hall, the guests, the altar, the bride. Jian Mo gasped, stumbling slightly, but his body quickly corrected itself, snapping back into position like a puppet pulled tight on its strings. This time, he noticed something new. On his sleeve, a stain, dark, blood. His breath hitched. That hadn't been there before, had it? The chanting began again, louder, faster, more urgent. The loop was accelerating, each cycle shorter, tighter, more aggressive, like the system was trying to force completion. Jian Mo moved forward again, but now he fought. Every step resisted, every motion strained. The invisible threads pulling him were still there, but they weren't perfect anymore. They trembled, flickered, like something was interfering. The glitch, the memory, the truth behind the ritual. The guests stood, but this time, some of them didn't move in sync. A hand raised too late, a head turned too early, a body froze mid-motion. The perfection was breaking. The ceremony was failing. Jian Mo reached the altar once more. The bride stood before him, her hand lifted, but this time, it shook slightly, almost unnoticeable, but real. The void where her face should be flickered again, for longer this time, and beneath it, that same terrified expression, trapped, begging, not for completion, but for release. Jian Mo's hand hovered in front of hers. The force pulling him forward surged, stronger than ever, demanding. Finally, this was the moment. The one the loop had been building toward. The one it had failed to reach over and over again. And now, it would succeed. Unless he broke it. Jian Mo's fingers twitched, not forward, but back, just slightly. Enough to hesitate, enough to resist. The entire hall reacted instantly. The chanting distorted, the guests froze mid-motion, the lanterns flickered violently, the air grew heavy, crushing. The system did not accept deviation. But Jian Mo had seen it now. The truth behind the perfection, the flaw beneath the loop. And he realized this ceremony wasn't endless because it was perfect. It was endless because it could never be completed. And the moment someone tried to finish it was the moment everything would collapse. The pressure was unbearable. It pressed against Jian Mo from all sides, not just his body, but his thoughts, his will, his sense of self. The moment his hand hesitated, the entire world reacted like a living system rejecting an error. The chanting twisted. What had once been rhythmic and controlled now fractured into overlapping voices, each one out of sync, each one louder than the last. It no longer sounded like a ceremony. It sounded like something breaking. Jian Mo's arm trembled violently. The force pulling him forward intensified, dragging his hand closer to the bride's. Every inch felt heavier, as if the air itself had turned solid, forcing him into the final motion. Finish it. The voice didn't come from outside. It came from everywhere. From the guests, from the walls, from inside his own head. Complete the ceremony. The bride's hand remained extended, waiting, demanding. Her sleeve swayed slightly, though there was no wind. The red fabric seemed darker now, the color deepening into something closer to black, as if the ritual itself was feeding on his hesitation. Jian Mo clenched his teeth. No, the word barely formed, but it was enough. For the first time, he was choosing, not following, not repeating, choosing. The realization struck him like a shock. This place wasn't controlling him completely. It was guiding, pushing, forcing. But only along the path that had always been taken. The loop existed because no one had ever done anything different. No one had ever broken the sequence, until now. Jian Mo's gaze dropped, to his sleeve, to the dark stain that hadn't been there before. Blood, his blood. Proof that something from outside the ritual, something real, had already begun to interfere. The chanting grew louder, faster, more desperate. The guests began to move again, but not in sync. Their bodies jerked unnaturally, some repeating motions too quickly, others freezing mid-action. Their blurred faces turned toward Jian Mo all at once, watching, judging, warning. The system was destabilizing, and it knew he was the cause. Jian Mo's hand was inches from the bride's, close enough to feel the cold radiating from her skin, close enough to end it, or trap himself forever. His breathing steady, not because he was calm, but because he understood. This isn't a ceremony. His voice echoed strangely, overlapping with itself. It's a loop that needs a trigger. The bride's hand twitched, just slightly. The void of her face flickered again, and for a split second, that terrified expression returned. Not demanding, not waiting, but pleading. Don't. Jian Mo's eyes hardened. Then he moved, not forward, but down. His free hand shot toward his sleeve, fingers digging into the fabric, searching, until they found something sharp. A broken fragment, a piece of something that didn't belong, a flaw, a crack. Exactly what this place couldn't tolerate. Without hesitation, he dragged it across his body. The pain was immediate, real, sharp enough to cut through the suffocating pressure of the ritual. Blood spilled instantly, dark and vivid against his skin. And for the first time, it didn't follow the rules. It didn't disappear. It didn't reset. It stayed, dripping, falling, onto the red ceremonial robe. The moment it touched, everything stopped. The chanting cut off, abruptly, violently, as if a voice had been silenced mid-sentence. The guests froze, completely, their distorted forms locked in place like broken statues. The air collapsed inward. Jian Mo felt the force pulling him weaken, just slightly, but enough to act. He raised his bleeding hand and pressed it firmly against the bride's robe, right over her chest. The red fabric absorbed the blood instantly. But instead of blending, it reacted. The color shifted, distorted, as if rejecting the intrusion. The bride's body jerked. Her hand snapped shut, not grabbing him, but twitching uncontrollably like something inside her had been disrupted. The void of her face flickered violently, fragments of that hidden face breaking through, fear, pain, awareness. For the first time, she wasn't part of the ritual. She was inside it, trapped. The hall began to crack. Not physically, but structurally. The illusion itself started to fracture. The lanterns above shattered into fragments of light. The guests glitched, their forms duplicating, overlapping, collapsing into each other. The chanting returned, but reversed, distorted, like time itself was trying to rewind. No, the voices whispered, not this. This isn't part of the ceremony. Jian Mo stepped back, fully in control now. The invisible threads that once bound him had loosened, unraveling under the weight of something the system couldn't process. Reality, imperfection, blood. The bride staggered, her body no longer still, no longer composed, her head lowered then lifted again, slowly, deliberately. The void faded just enough to reveal her face, fully for the first time, alive, terrified, aware. And then she screamed, a sound that didn't belong to the ritual, a sound that didn't loop, a sound that broke everything. The hall collapsed, the altar shattered, the world tore itself apart, not into fragments, but into nothing. And Jian Mo was falling again, but this time he wasn't being pulled in, he was being thrown out. The scream didn't echo, it didn't fade, it didn't belong to space or distance, it existed everywhere at once, and then it tore everything apart. The world didn't shatter like glass, it unraveled. The ceremonial hall twisted violently as if pulled apart by invisible forces from every direction. The red pillars bent and stretched into impossible shapes before snapping into fragments that dissolved midair. Lanterns burst into streaks of light, their glow smearing across the darkness like paint dragged across a broken canvas. Jian Mo felt himself falling, again. But this time, there was no sensation of being pulled, no force guiding him, no ritual controlling his path. He was weightless, free. And yet, the fall felt worse, because there was nothing to fall through, only a void, endless, silent, unstable. Fragments of the ceremony flickered around him. The altar appeared, then vanished. The guests' blurred faces surfaced briefly, their forms glitching, overlapping, dissolving into formless shadows. The chanting returned, but broken, reversed, slowed. Each syllable stretched unnaturally, as if time itself was collapsing alongside the space it once held together. Jian Mo reached out instinctively, but there was nothing to grab, nothing to hold, nothing real. Then he saw her, the bride. Not standing, not still, just like him. Her red dress no longer perfect, no longer untouched. The fabric tore as she descended, unraveling into long strands that dissolved into darkness before they could drift away. Her face, fully visible now, no void, no emptiness, just a girl, terrified. Her eyes locked onto his, not with possession, not with ritual, but with something painfully human. Fear, confusion, and something deeper, recognition. She reached out, not as part of the ceremony, not as an invitation, but as a reflex. As someone falling would reach for anything, anyone, to stop the descent. Jian Mo's body reacted before his mind could catch up. He reached back. Their hands came close, so close, but never touched. Something between them resisted. Not a force, not a barrier, but a separation. Two different states of existence refusing to overlap. She was still part of it, and he was already leaving. Her expression changed. The moment she realized, her fingers trembled, then slowly curled back toward herself. Not reaching anymore, not asking, just accepting. Jian Mo's chest tightened. No. This time his voice existed, raw, desperate, but it didn't matter because the distance between them was growing. Not physically, but conceptually. She was fading, becoming less real, less defined, like a memory losing its detail. The world around them continued to collapse, fragments spinning faster, dissolving quicker, the structure of the space unable to sustain itself without the ritual holding it together. The system had failed, the loop had broken, and without it, nothing could remain. The bride's form flickered, once, twice, her face distorted slightly, not into the void it once was, but into something incomplete, unfinished, like a moment that had never been allowed to end. Her lips parted, as if trying to say something, one final word, but no sound came, because this place, this moment, was no longer capable of continuing. Jian Mo felt a sudden force surge through him, not pulling, but pushing, violently. The void compressed around him, folding inward like collapsing space, forcing him out of it. Faster, 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 until impact. Reality slammed back into place, hard, cold, silent. Jian Mo gasped as air rushed violently into his lungs. He was on the floor, the bridal chamber, the same silence, the same stillness, as if nothing had ever happened. His body trembled uncontrollably as he pushed himself up, his vision spinning, his breath uneven. The mirror stood before him, unbroken, untouched, perfect, as if it had never opened, never consumed him, never held anything at all. Jian Mo stared at it, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Then, something moved inside the mirror. The bride stood there once more, still, silent, her face gone again, replaced by that empty void. But this time, it wasn't the same, because as Jian Mo stared, he noticed it, a single tear sliding slowly down from where her eyes should have been. And then, her head tilted, just slightly. Not in invitation, not in ritual, but in recognition. She remembered. And somehow, that was worse than everything that came before. Jian Mo didn't move. He couldn't, not because something was holding him, but because the realization had rooted him in place. The mirror stood before him, unchanged, perfect, silent, but now he understood. It was never a haunting. His voice was low, unsteady, as if speaking too loudly might pull him back into that place. It was a moment. The image of the collapsing world replayed in his mind, not as chaos, but as structure. The repetition, the ceremony, the guests, the altar. Every detail had followed a pattern so precise it could only exist for one reason: to preserve something. Not a spirit, not a memory, but a single point in time. Jian Mo stepped closer to the mirror, slowly, carefully. The bride remained inside, motionless, faceless, but no longer unfamiliar. That wasn't death. His eyes narrowed slightly as fragments began to align. The ceremony never completed. That was the key. Every loop had led to the same moment, the exchange, the joining, the final step that would seal the ritual. But it never happened. It couldn't happen, because something interrupted it, something catastrophic, something final. Jian Mo's reflection wavered slightly, and for a brief second, he saw it. Not the ceremony, but what came before it. The room, alive, voices, movement. The bride, human, breathing, afraid, not standing still, not waiting, but trembling. Something was wrong. Something had already begun to break. She didn't die in the ritual, Jian Mo whispered. His breath slowed, his thoughts sharpened. She died before it could finish. That was why the loop existed, not to repeat the wedding, but to reach it. Over and over again, an unfinished action, frozen in time, forced to replay endlessly because it had no resolution. A system without an ending, a moment without closure. And the bride, she wasn't the creator of it. She was the center, the anchor, the one trapped at the exact point where everything stopped. Her face, the void. It was never meant to be empty. It was missing, erased. Because that final moment, the moment of her death, was something the loop could not process, could not complete. So it removed it, again and again and again. Jian Mo's hand lifted slightly, almost instinctively, stopping just short of the mirror's surface. She's not dead. The words felt wrong, and yet they were the only truth that made sense. She's still there, not as a ghost, not as a spirit, but as a consciousness locked inside the last second of her life, endlessly replaying the path that leads to it, but never allowed to reach it. Because the moment she does, the loop ends. Everything ends. The mirror flickered, just close, and in that flicker, her face appeared again, clear, terrified, aware. Her lips moved, slowly, carefully. This time, Jian Mo understood. Not a scream, not a warning, but a truth. I'm still here. The mirror stilled, her face vanished, the void returned. But now, it meant something different. Not emptiness, not absence, but interruption. A moment cut away, a death that never finished happening. Jian Mo lowered his hand, his chest tightened as the weight of it settled in. This wasn't over, it couldn't be, because the loop was broken, but the moment still existed, and somewhere inside that mirror, she was still falling, toward a death that had been delayed for far too long. Jian Mo stood in silence. The room had returned to what it always was, still, empty, untouched. The red decorations hung lifeless from its mirror, the air no longer present. But something had changed. He could feel it. The mirror no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a door, left slightly open. Inside it, the bride stood motionless, her faceless gaze fixed forward. No movement, no sound, no sign that anything had ever happened. Except, Jian Mo knew better now. She's still there, not a ghost, not gone, just waiting. Not for a groom, not for a ceremony, but for an ending, a real one. His reflection stared back at him, steady, but behind it, something felt unfinished, like the world itself was holding its breath. Because if the ritual was broken, then what happens next? If the loop no longer protects that moment, if time is allowed to move forward, will she finally die? Or worse, will she finally be free? Jian Mo didn't look away, because deep down, he already knew. Some endings are far more terrifying than anything that repeats forever.
Shadows crawl where the light won't go. A silent wind, it starts to grow.